Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Chris Hale. I'm the CEO of GI Jobs, and I'd like to welcome you to the GI Jobs Virtual Job Fair. You have arrived at our kickoff keynote conversation. We are truly honored here today to be joined by the closest thing we have to Superman here in America, a humble Superman. Superman is humble. Naval Academy grad, Navy SEAL, honor man as a Navy SEAL in his class of buds, two tours in Afghanistan, two tours in the Med, two tours to outer space, Bronze Star with a Combat V, fifth most hours of any astronaut, I think, in US space history. That wasn't enough. Chief of the Astronaut Office, has his own Wikipedia page, and then became the president of the National Medal of Honor Museum Foundation, Mr. Chris Cassidy. It's a pleasure to have you here, sir. Welcome.
Yeah, Chris, great to be with you. And we were at the Naval Academy together. We did just kind of recently put that together. So it's really cool to connect with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, we had an opportunity to speak, to hear you speak at the Pittsburgh event. We met at Soldiers and Sailors Hall in Pittsburgh, and you were kind enough to come in with a fellow, or not a fellow, but a Medal of Honor recipient that's in your crew there, Kyle White. And it was great to meet him. What an amazing American he is, and great to have you speak there. Put on by the Naval Academy Alumni Association chapter in Pittsburgh. So it was great to have you there.
Yeah, it really was. You know, the interesting thing is, since I've taken over and joined the cause at the National Medal of Honor Museum, I've gotten to know on a really personal level many of the Medal of Honor recipients. There's 65 of them living now, and but I had never met Kyle White. And because of travel woes and whatnot, I arrived in the building moments before going on the stage. So the fun part for me was that the interview on the stage with Kyle, I was getting to know him in that very moment, just like you guys were. So I really, really enjoyed it. It was a special evening.
It was genuine, and it came across that way. And I like the fireside chat format that you guys chose. It was cool. And I tell you what, it was, I was reflecting, this, I guess, last week when we had, the elections, and you see the candidates that are running for office, and all the divisiveness in our country today. And there's some things that bring us all together as Americans, but one thing for certain that brings us all together as Americans is support for our nation's veterans. And fortunately, Veterans Day was 3 days after the election. You've got all this bitter divisiveness, and then 3 days later, here I am at my youngest son is in second grade, and he had a presentation there at Veterans Day at his elementary school, and the whole school came together. Everybody, all ethnicities and all ages, to celebrate kids in the school who were related to veterans. And it's great to see that. When you see people like yourself, and you see people like Kyle White, who are the standard bearers of what we view as the penultimate of military service, it's just amazing. And you guys are just truly the heroes, and just hats off to you. But it's just so cool how we're able to bring people together for support for our nation's troops.
Yeah, amen. And this comment is very applicable to the group that we're speaking with, because folks are going through transition, military to civilian. And when it was a summer of 21, just a couple, like 18 months ago, when I was going through that. And you hear people tell you it's going to be a process that you have to go through physically and emotionally. And, yeah, it's not going to affect me. But it really did. Like, I had a government paycheck, since a Navy paycheck specifically, since I was 18 years old. And I got to do some amazing things, but it was all because I was in the Navy. And then and then leaving and moving on to something else, you realize there's this void that will be there with the service piece. And for me, I got really lucky because now I'm working amongst military veterans and special military veterans, and I feel like there's a little bit of plug in on the service part still now that I've hung my uniform up and working as a civilian.
Yeah, yeah, it's amazing work you do. And we'll fast forward to that a little bit. I think most people are surprised to find out that there isn't already a National Medal of Honor museum, right?
Yeah, I was, and we, you think, oh, well, in DC, there must be one. And there was prior to my joining this cause, they did study what would it take to put a museum in DC, and it's decades of work. So because of that we're putting a monument in DC in a museum in the central part of the country in the Dallas Metroplex. There exists regional, hometown, smaller Medal of Honor exhibits and memorials and museums around the country, but not one that's a national one. So that's what we're bringing to life.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love the work that you're doing there. How did you get connected to that line of work after you left the Navy?
It's funny, when you're going through out of the military transition, there's all these transition assistance programs and online things that you go and tell you how you should make sure you have your resume and your nice suit and all that stuff, and all that's important. But what I think most of the people I've talked to, it's their personal network and friends of friends that more than likely leads to something that's going to mean something to you. And that was the case for me. My swim buddy and buds, we were ensigns together and went through SEAL training together step by step. And he was now on the Medal of Honor Museum Foundation Board of Directors. And he knew I was getting out of Navy and leaving NASA. And he reached out and said, would you be interested in coming to help on for our project? And at first I was like, no, I don't even know how to spell museum without Microsoft Word telling me where the E and the U are. I'm not your guy. But then I learned more about it, and it seemed like a good fit, and here I am.
Yeah, you guys are doing such great work. Tell us about when is the museum going to open? When is it set to open?
Yeah, we're 6 months into construction, a lot of subterranean and foundational work in those months, but right now it's starting to come to life out of the ground. But we're still 2 years from opening it. That includes the building construction, and then once the building is complete, then the museum people have to come, the exhibit people have to come in and make it ready for visitors. So we're targeting Veterans Day, so this week in 2024.
Okay, nice. And in the Dallas area, obviously, and then do you guys have you thought anything about the kind of a kickoff that you're going to have for that opening?
It'll probably be multiple events. I'm sure that there'll be sort of a larger ceremonial thing with dignitaries and the museum supporters. But then over the course of a couple of days, things more geared towards the public and to be quite and with military units and flyovers and all that stuff that we can think of and we're able to conjure up. That plan is still yet to come, but it'll be for the nation to enjoy. That's our goal.
That's going to be great. Tell us, how can people that want to help now, right? You guys are raising money. How can people help? Give us a website address or where they can donate.
mohmuseum.org. You can learn about the project. We got videos there on what the building will look like. And the project also includes a leadership institute. And I mentioned the monument in DC. There's a button where you can contribute if you're interested. There's lots of great causes out there. So we just appreciate every single dollar. And even just a visit and becoming aware. And if your contribution is telling a friend or neighbor or a loved one about what you learned, that's a win for us too. So we appreciate any and all interest in all forms.
Awesome. We'll get that posted up on our websites and in different places. mohmuseum.org, guys. Sounds good. Well, let's get into your background, Chris. So let's start with you growing up. I think a lot of people look at your story and they're like, you're very humble, but I mean, it is just an amazing, you couldn't write a more all-American, just hero kind of a story than the one that you've got. And I know that I know how humble you are and how that comes across, but it's truly inspiring. Tell us about, what kind of a child, what kind of kid were you that drove you to this level of success growing up and your first choice to go to the Naval Academy?
Yeah, I mean, I mean this in all sincerity. I was just a normal kid. I loved sports. I grew up in a small town in Maine where you could play 3 sports in a school year. Football season ended, and the next Monday basketball season started, and then basketball season ended, and then baseball season started. So I just always enjoyed sports. I enjoyed being part of a team. My town was on the coast, so I did enjoy the water. There's no waves to speak of in Maine, so I wasn't a surfer, but I always enjoyed splashing around the water. And I think that interest, although I didn't know about SEAL teams when I was in high school. If you remember, Chris, back then, you didn't really know what a Navy SEAL was. A few people did if you had military affiliation or you saw a movie or something, but I think Magnum PI might have been a Navy SEAL prior to him being Magnum PI. But now it's totally different. Everybody knows a Navy SEAL. There's SEAL Guide books in every bookstore, and yeah, it was just different when we were growing up. And but I did watch the Army Navy football game every single year. And then when it came time to be in high school looking for colleges, I remember learning about the Naval Academy and kind of piecing it together in my head, like, oh, those are the guys that play football in December against the Army guys. And I saw cool pictures of men and women in uniform and nice buildings on the river. It just felt like a good fit for me. So there was nobody in my family pushing me in the military. Nobody had been in the military. And it just was something that kind of I gravitated towards because of Army Navy football and the cool pictures I saw in the guidance counselor's office. And then in the fine print, it says it's free to go here. And I'm like, yeah, that's for me.
Mom and dad said the same thing, probably.
Mom
too,
and
right?
dad said the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's cool. And an Army Navy football game back then wasn't near as big as it is now. I mean, it's a spectacle now. I mean, it's just unbelievable how many people watch it now. For me, it was Top Gun. I was class of 91. I was a high school senior in 86 and 87. Top Gun came out, I think, the summer between my junior and senior year. And it was like, wow. I mean, that my class. Everybody wanted to go naval aviation because of that.
Right.
And now you've got the second version of that. You've got the obviously the Blue Angels and all these PR things that the Navy does. So it's cool how you get young men and women inspired behind that kind of a thing, and you move forward with it. Okay, so you're at the Naval Academy, you're doing your thing. Jack says, so my classmate was your second class in charge of training. He said you were just an outstanding. Everybody loved you. But getting into SEALs out of the Naval Academy, at least my class, I want to say there might have been 25 out of a class that was 950 or so people. Very, very selective. Why did you choose SEALs? And, what was that process like to get selected for SEAL training?
Yeah. Like I said, I had not a lot of knowledge about the military when I entered there. I went to the Navy prep school in Newport, and it was there that because the officer candidate school was in the building adjacent to us, and there were enlisted SEALs that came to Newport to become commissioned officers. And in the chow hall, I saw a few of these gentlemen with this huge pin on their uniform, and they just looked different and carried themselves differently than their OCS classmates. And I remember being really kind of like, wow, like what is that whole thing? And learning about it a little bit at the prep school. And then when I got to Annapolis my plebe year, of course, you remember, Chris, they've got on the staff at the Naval Academy representatives from all the different communities that you can do things in the Navy. And they certainly, that was the case for SEALs too. So I learned a little bit more about it and continued throughout my time there to do the prerequisites required for SEALs, but also for nuclear submarines. I thought those were cool. And my eyesight was not, it's like right on the border of 20/20. So I wasn't super sure I could be a pilot. So anyways, I just kind of kept those doors open. And then when it really came time to decide, I actually took a weekend and drove from Annapolis my senior year down to Norfolk, Virginia. And back in those days, you just knock on the quarterdeck of SEAL Team 2, 4, and 8. And I did that, and I got some duty petty officer and the duty chief, and they chatted with me and told me about the lifestyle and told me about the mission. And I learned a lot and said, this is for me. I really can see myself doing it, and was lucky enough to get one of those positions. As you mentioned, there's some number like 20 in the class available. It's a little more now, but and same my class as it was yours. And I wasn't sure. I was about 150, maybe 175 in the class out of 900,000, whatever. So I was reasonably sure I would get one, but of the billets, but I didn't think they would go out. And for those listening, you pick your positions. The number one person in the class gets first pick, and then it goes all the way down the class until all the positions are used up. And so the 20 SEAL spots usually went to somewhere in the 300 or 400 in the class, but because not everybody completes all the prerequisites. So I was lucky enough to get one, and it worked out.
Yeah. So you're in the SEALs. You're the honor man, which is selected by the fellow team members, I believe. Is that right?
Yep, the instructors have some vote in it, and your peers have some vote in it. To be honest, that's my most proud moment was receiving that designation.
Yeah. And how many were in your buds class?
So on the day one of week one, there was 120 of us. Of those 120, 17 graduated in the same class. If you look at our graduation photo, there's probably around 39, 40. And that's because if you are in a class and you're performing fine and have a good attitude, but you get hurt, you're allowed to then step out of the class and heal your body and then reinsert into a subsequent class. So we had about double of our same number who were from a previous class and healed up, and then they finished with us.
Nice. And what was you did 2 deployments, I think, to Afghanistan. You did 2 to the Med. That's a lot of ground to cover, but give us, what's one of your highlight stories of that time as a Navy SEAL?
Yeah, so much to say in that time frame, but the first 4 years I drove underwater vehicles called SEAL delivery vehicles. I loved that job. I just thought it was so cool when you submerge with your buddy and you're just problem solving on your own in the ocean, and then launching from a full-size submarine and coming into shore and doing some mission, and then later on in the evening or morning twilight hours, rendezvousing back with the submarine out at sea. I just really loved it. And then I went to grad school, and then went after that was in SEAL Team 3 at the time of September 11th, 2001, and deployed in the 10 to 14 days after 9/11 to Afghanistan. And so many stories to be told there, but you want to hear one of my most memorable but funny but significant stories about Afghanistan?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So we were given a mission tasking to go to the Afghan-Pakistan border. We knew there's a cave complex, and we the United States, we knew bin Laden was somewhere in that area. But so we were tasked with this mission to go there. And when you get a mission tasking, you have like 48 hours, 2 days more plus or minus to get your plan together, organize the forces that you'll be operating with, and rehearse, and then give a mission briefing to the boss, and then go execute. And so for the better part of these 2 days, we were in this tent. You can kind of picture it, maps and charts on the back side, a sand table right up there by the front with GI Joe guys on it to do your maneuvers, wooden benches for the briefing visitors to sit in. And then so we're hunkered down in there for most of this 48 hours. So it comes time to do the briefing, and my boss at the time was this guy named Captain Bob Harwood, who went on to be an admiral, but he was a Navy SEAL in charge of all the operations in Afghanistan, and super intense and sometimes mean guy. And so we felt prepared. We gave him the briefing. I'm doing the talking. At the end, he asked some questions. At the end, he's like, okay, all right, go do the mission. And I'm like, yes, okay, that's amazing. That's the best outcome we could have. So everybody's leaving the tent, and I roll up the maps and charts and kind of look around, mess up the sand table, sanitize the room. Everybody's gone. And I look at my watch, there's like 38 minutes till I got to be on the helicopter. And I realize I need some food. I need to use the bathroom. I got a little bit of gear to get together in my hooch. And then I got to get to the helicopter. Well, I better get going. I'll use the restroom first. So I go to leave the tent. And at the time, in Afghanistan, no white lights allowed, only red lights or no lights. And so I'm making my way with my little red lens flashlight to the bathroom, which was a trench dug in the ground, 2 4x4 wooden posts over the trench, and then 3 automobile tires suspended on the wood, and then 3 sides of plywood giving you some privacy. Open face of the bathroom was looking at the runway, so you could look at planes come and go as you're doing your business. So I round the corner of the plywood with my red lens flashlight, and it illuminates a pair of boots. I go up a little higher, and a pair of naked shins. And then I raise it a little higher, and it illuminates whose face? Captain Harwood, his face. And he's sitting on the middle tire. And I'm like, oh my God, who sits on the middle tire? But like 37 minutes now, I got to do all this stuff in my head. I'm like, do I have time to go eat and get my gear and then come back? No, it doesn't make sense. So, hey, sir, can I join you? Yeah, Cassidy, have a seat, have a seat. So I sit down, drop my trowel, our knees are touching, our boots are touching. It's super awkward moment. But then all of a sudden he leans to me and goes, hey, you know what I expect of you? I expect you to make good decisions and bring the guys home safely. And so in that really awkward, funny, vulnerable moment, I got the biggest leadership lesson of my life, really, which was, all of us, whether you're military or civilian, your organization is paying you. The reason I was getting a paycheck from the United States government that day was to use my head, make good decisions, and execute the mission safely and effectively. And it applies to all of us. It applies to civilian, military, whoever. That's why people entrust you to be in the position you are. And it's a true story. I did make it. I did go to the bathroom. I did get my food. I did get on the helicopter, and it all worked out. But funny story along the way.
That is really cool. That's that's really cool. Great story. And I think he was one of the guys that inspired one of my classmates, Dan Imbat, who turned out to be one of the UAV pioneers and getting the SEALs, a lot of the UAV stuff that you guys worked with over there, and all the drone technology and stuff like that. But no, good stuff, good story. So let's fast forward to your astronaut days. So you applied to astronaut school. I think you were the second SEAL that was in space. William
Yep.
Shepard, I think
Bill
was the
Shepard.
first.
Yep.
Yeah. So tell us about, man, talk about like selective. How do you even get on the radar for that? I mean, I know that there are folks who go through test pilot school. That's a more traditional path to becoming an astronaut. But as a SEAL, tell us about that whole selection process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when I was in high school, young guy learning about the Naval Academy, of course I knew about NASA, but it was nothing that was even on my mind as something that I like. That's what other people do. Other people are astronauts, not me. And when you were watching Top Gun that same year, remember they rolled the TVs into the cafeteria in high school one day, and they're showing the Challenger explode. We watched it when we were in high school, and that was my kind of, okay, there's astronauts, there's space shuttles, it's dangerous, it's risky, but nothing on my radar screen. So I had been now through the academy, through SEAL training, in my job in the teams, and I met in a social place, I can't remember, a cookout or something, Bill Shepard, who, as you mentioned, was the first SEAL. And just kind of talking to him, I realized that it's an application process. We hire astronauts every 4 years. You can apply just like you apply to graduate school or college. And a light bulb dawned on me, like, oh, he said, you got to be a US citizen. You got to have a bachelor's degree in some kind of technical STEM type major. And I realized my background was lining up to be similar to his. I had the citizenship and the degree requirements. Why don't I just try? Like, I have nothing to lose except some hours of putting an essay together. And I applied in 2000, the astronaut class of 2000. I did not get an interview. I did not get selected. I hadn't completed graduate school. I hadn't had that experience in Afghanistan. And then 4 years later, for the class of 2004, that's when I was selected, and I moved from Norfolk, Virginia, doing SEAL team stuff, to Houston, Texas, where I then lived for the next 17, almost 18 years, working at the Johnson Space Center.
Wow, so cool. And then you did 2 space flights. Tell us about, I mean,
yeah, 3, one on a
3
space
space
shuttle, and then which is 2 weeks long, and then 2 launches on a Russian Soyuz. Each of those were 6 months long. Yeah.
Wow, fantastic. So the highlights of that, I mean, just amazing, right? Tell us about that first experience taking
Yeah,
off.
there's so many things to share, but the first experiences of things are the most memorable, right? And that's like the showing up to, as simple as showing up to work at my first, astronaut meeting. Monday morning meetings are just like any other company where, it's all everybody at 8:30 or whatever. And I remember walking into my first astronaut Monday morning meeting. That was looking around the room going, there's John Young, there's so-and-so. And amazing part right there. My first launch, driving to the launch pad with my shuttle crew and getting out of the van and looking up at this tower, steaming energy, and just smell and sound, and just all of that energy trapped up in that thing, and riding the elevator to the top of it. The moment they lit it off, and you're just rumbling and realizing, wow, it's really here. And my first spacewalk, opening the hatch and looking down at the planet between my toes. There's just so many stories to share. Everything is just amazing. And looking out the window at Earth below you, people often ask, did it change you in any way? No, not really. Like, I was the same guy, but what it did make me is more appreciative of Earth as a home to now 8 billion people. And just like the car we drive or the space station that we're in at the time, it's a thing that needs to be maintained. And that's what made me realize that Earth is just this fragile marble, and we all have to do it. So it made me much more Earth aware and Earth conscious than I was prior to flight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Chris, tell us about, just the whole, the space exploration. Obviously, space exploration has been a privatization of that to some degree now, and Artemis is now, we're going to go back to the moon, and we've got the telescopes that are seeing far off, and all this exploration. What's, in your opinion, what's the benefit to society for all this space exploration?
Yeah, there's the answers that you always get, the ones, which are true, which are real, the answers, the jobs in the area where the companies are and the government contracts are, the economic impact of that, the spin-offs of innovations that have come from spaceflight, and all those are good answers. I think, me personally, the answer that resonates more loudly with me is less of a dollars and cents thing and more of a touchy-feely national pride, or pride in humankind. Like, think about in 1969 when Neil and Buzz and Mike Collins orbiting the moon, but Neil and Buzz stepped foot on it, and that people are listening on the radio and tuning in with grainy black and white televisions, and it brought everybody together. It brought our nation together. It brought the world together. And it's like, holy crap, there's people that brush their teeth just like I do, and they're walking on the moon right now. Wow. Just think about what that's going to do on Mars, when the whole entire world has a device in their hand and watching live in HD streaming 4K views of the helmet cameras of those folks from Mars. And I don't think it'll be for Americans. I think a Mars mission is more expensive than even just one nation doing it. And so you'll have 4 nation flags on spacesuits, and those people walking on the surface. And I just think that it is a unifying thing for all people, that's where the true benefit is.
Yeah, yeah, it bonds us all as Earthlings, right? As opposed
Yeah.
to members of each of these sovereign nations. What do you do for adrenaline rushes now after what you've done, right? It's what's what do you how do you get that?
I don't feel like I have a huge need for it anymore. I do. Yesterday there was a spacewalk on the space station, and I did kind of pay attention and think about my two friends that are out there, and that adrenaline hype that comes when you open the hatch and you look out, and you got people not yelling, but chirping in your ear about what you got to do next. And so I had a little bit of adrenaline rush with that. What do I do now? I mean, I'm just a normal guy working a civilian job, but um, I like to do the same stuff: exercise, ride bike, not get passed on the Peloton screen by other 50-year-olds.
Nice, love it. That's beautiful. Good stuff. Well, listen, it's been an absolute honor and a treat for those who are attending the virtual job fair, and can't thank you enough. Um, just an honor to speak with you, and I hope that I think I share everybody's desire. Hopefully, you'll run for office someday, because I think
No chance, man. Not
come
a chance.
on, come on, why not?
No. I see how hard it is to raise money for a museum. I don't want to raise money for myself. That's not happening.
Yeah, I tell you though, serving your country, and you've just got a lifetime of service, and it's a pleasure to meet you, and it's a pleasure to know you, and thank you for all that you've done for our country. And maybe we can convince you to run for office someday. We need elected officials with your background. But
Thank you,
great
Chris.
stuff. Thank you so much for joining us. And to all the virtual job fair attendees today, we really encourage you to get out there, speak with the companies that are here to help you move on to your next place in the civilian world, if you're transitioning out of the private sector now. And wish you all the best as you talk to those companies and go forward in your civilian careers. Thank you very much for attending. Have a great day, everybody. See ya.